Um, so as you know, the OrasiaPact project, one of the things we're trying to do is to also find an empirical way to see where and how people in New Zealand collaborate with, in particular Europe, but also with Japan, Korea, and Australia. And to do that, we developed a questionnaire that was sent out. And my presentation today is showing you the results of that questionnaire. And I warned you that I would bring numbers, but since I know this is not the most exciting thing, I'm going to limit myself to 10 numbers, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Although I'll use probably different combinations of them, but these are the only numbers you will have to remember. Now, the questionnaire that we put together was handed out, the data was actually collected between July 29th and until very recent. And we took it upon ourselves to promote this questionnaire in New Zealand and collect the answers. So we approached approximately 250 ICT companies. Brett has been also being very helpful in spreading the word about the questionnaire, mailing lists, websites. We also personally invited people from academia. So I think we probably got a good coverage of New Zealand. And the focus of the questionnaire was really asking about, well, how do you collaborate right now? How do you want to collaborate in the future? With whom do you collaborate? And so forth. And the one thing we can do from this is descriptive statistics, so I can show you some results, but I cannot offer you any kind of correlation or any kind of further statistics. It is really just descriptive statistics. So we'll dive right into it. Responses. So this is where the questionnaire was not only administered for New Zealand, but actually worldwide to all the partners in the consortium. And I'm proud to say that, taking into account New Zealand's very small size, we did pretty well in being able to gather responses. And if you want to have the exact numbers, we've got 60 responses. Japan only got 52, haha. The first question, I'm actually going to walk you through a couple of questions we asked and the answers that came up. So one of the questions we asked was, who are you? What are you doing? And the one thing that popped up here, which was quite interesting, is that 43 responses actually said other, and that usually means something. There's some trouble. There is a small chance here that there has been a technical hiccup because we had some indications of people who told us, hey, but we filled it in, and when we looked it up in the results, they actually didn't show up, so we might have missed a couple of two, but we're right now investigating if we have lost any answers, but this is as it is right now. So when I saw this big other section, I was curious about, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? So one of the other questions was like, well, what does best describes the organization? And it turned out, hey, it's all universities. So the academics essentially filled in the questionnaires, and we haven't received many responses from the companies. Now, when we then look at the companies, the question was, well, what are the topics that you're interested in? And these topics actually are aligned to, you can't read it, don't worry. The topics are actually aligned to what the framework, this FP7 framework in Europe is actually targeting right now. So the question was like, well, where on these research topics do you see yourself right now? What are the kind of proposals that you're currently working on, and what are you planning to do in the future? And interestingly, future and emerging technologies is one of the best things. Interesting, what the digital libraries and content, what Brett just mentioned in terms of digital content creation, wasn't as strong, at least from this part. Robotics is going very strong, so Auckland, where are you? There. We're doing good. Right. This part is actually my favorite part here, because this is, I'm not sure who of you actually have still some sort of relationship to Europe, but there is an annual event called the European Song Contest. Who's aware of that? All right. So this is like that, It's like, who do you want to work with? And here it is, and the New Zealanders predominantly want to actually, also for all of you who don't know it, I just took it, the European Song Contest will take place in Düsseldorf this year. It's an amazing event. You can learn so much about Europe by just spending these 2 hours in front of television. It is absolutely amazing. You see all these cultural things going on, like for example the Danish, and it's like a competition. You've got singers who represent the country, and they then give points by all the other countries. And what you see is, for example, that the Danish and the Swedish, they always vote for each other, because they're very similar maybe. The Turkish and the Greek never vote for each other. Germany never gets any point from anybody. And Ireland has been amazingly successful. So it is really, really interesting. And sometimes also funny. I think it was 2 years ago, there's a Finnish band who won it actually, and they were dressed up as monsters. It's amazing. So all kind of interesting things happen. If you tune to BBC, they've got very good commentary on it. It's going on for years. It's just funny. Anyway, back to some more serious business. So who are the most desired partners? And here we go. UK, Germany, France, Sweden, Netherlands. Those are the top ranking countries. And what you see, what is interesting here is, of course, hey, I'm not from the UK, I'm just a very recent Kiwi, so I know very little, but of course the links between the UK and New Zealand are very strong historically, and also language-wise, it just makes everything easier. So it's quite natural that the easiest partner to collaborate with is the UK. But then essentially it's just the big players, Germany and France, who come up next. And then I'd say the least desirable ones are then essentially the new members to the European Union, particularly the small ones, Lithuania, Romania, and so forth. Now, the question then is, well, why do you want to collaborate? And what we see here is that the biggest thing was the knowledge exchange. And I think we might have missed one possible answer there, and which is funding. So I think if we had put funding in there, that might have also attracted quite a few answers. Since the FP7 framework, all international partners can also receive funding from the EU, which of course makes it very attractive. But right now, as we see, the predominant thing is knowledge exchange. So then the next question was, well, what is your past experience? Have you ever collaborated with Europe? And everybody says, like, yes, we did. And then the question, of course, well, with whom did you collaborate? And hey, remember, it's academics. So they, of course, collaborated with other universities, other research organizations. And then you see the usual pattern that the partners have a certain size, which usually represents the size of the universities. And as you see also the numbers of projects that have been placed within the FP7 framework, or the FP frameworks in general, has increased. Possibly also because that the framework program has opened up to international partners. So then the next question was, well, how do you get to know your partners? When you go out there and you want to find them, how do you do that? And of course, the information that you get about the existing calls, well, there's a website from the European Union, CODIS, and you can just go there and find that up, or look it up. And so essentially what comes out of this is, predominantly it is the internet, for which we find information about our partners. And then there's, again, a rather big section, again, on on the finding partners. And I suspect that this is probably personal relationships. I mean, we meet each other, academics travel, we meet each other at conferences, we visit each other, we are in each other's program committees or reviewers. You essentially get to know people. And my suspicion is that that this kind of personal network that you develop as an academic is what helps you to also find other partners. And also in your field, you know your partners. It's not like you do research, on an island, but you actually, we know the big players in our own field, and so that identifying for them, for academics, is very easy, because we automatically have an international outlook. For companies, it might be different. I mean, of course, they can also use Google Scholar, and in theory, they could also find, easily other, interested or people who work on the same topic. But companies are a bit, well, they're not in the business of sharing information. Academics are. I mean, hey, we publish everything we can publish. Companies, never do that. Because it doesn't give them an advantage, really. So, the interesting thing was then, like, well, what kind of partners would you be looking for then? You know, what kind of expertise should they bring along? And what I personally find quite interesting was that manufacturing of electronic components and boards was high up there. So again, I'm not a Kiwi, so I'm not sure if there's any production facilities of this in New Zealand, but that seems to be a very, very popular thing of looking. But maybe this is also maybe when the academics or researchers thought about, well, you know, in our kind of research, what is that we don't do? Well, we don't do electrical engineering. So maybe if we want to look for an industrial partner, then that would be one that we would be grateful to have, because maybe this is missing in our portfolio. And then what kind of the type of partner do you want to look for? And this is not very much surprising that academics look for. Academics, or let's say in the wider sense, other researchers. And where do you find them? You find them in universities, government-funded organizations, and big let's say big companies that also can afford to have a research department, because that is where researchers hang out. So, in summary, it appears to be that, you know, from the little empirical data that we've been able to gather, that it is particularly academics who are interested in collaboration internationally. The focus that the New Zealanders have is the well-developed countries within Europe, right? So essentially we go for UK, Germany, France, essentially the big, well-developed countries. A lot of the academics have already existing relationships or existing experiences, which probably helps them to in their further development. Although we can't exclude there might be a certain bias, because think about it, those people who are not interested in collaboration probably didn't fill in the questionnaire. It appears that your professional network, your social network that you have in the academic world seems to be very helpful in identifying partners and approaching them. And not very surprising, New Zealand researchers want to collaborate with other researchers in the EU, which is, of course, well, once you look at that plane, it's not really surprising, really. The one thing that I've been missing, really, is the input from the companies. And I talked to Kay and also to some others, Eric as well, about, well, why is that? And apparently their experiences was quite similar. Getting responses from companies is much more difficult than getting responses from academia. And there seems to be a bit of a pattern. So I think we did an honest effort to approach companies, and we went to the TIN report and we emailed all these companies, we phoned them up. This is what we got. So the good news is there is a high interest of New Zealand researchers to collaborate with Europe, and I think given that so many have already experienced with it, probably this is a success story. And this has been the result of the questionnaire. Thank you very much.